Ultimately, what we believed was that these digital platforms would surpass the need for in-person connection, or at the very least, would be the primary connection point for people. The value was put on digital connection, but now it's really clear to see that Gen Z are saying, guys, the value has been placed back onto personal relationships. Well, hello and welcome back to the NextGen Podcast. It is great to have you here with us today, Season 2, Episode 23, and it is wonderful to have you with us today. Of course, a special welcome back to all of our NextGen Nation members. You know who you are, our special elite community members who have registered to be part of our NextGen Nation. If you've not done that yet, you're missing out. Get it done. Do the stuff, click the things, and register there. And no matter where you are around the world, and whatever platform you're listening on, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and all the other ones, welcome, welcome, welcome. Now remember, Annaliese and I, we don't know everything, but we do know some things. And we hope that our something is your one thing that you need to help you go to the next level in your leadership journey. Today, we're talking about something really exciting, and it actually comes from a brand new team training that we've released recently here in our ministry. We've released this as a team training, and we're going to talk about half of it today, and if you want the other half, you'll have to book the team training. But this is the name of the podcast for today and the team training. It is called Gen Z's Great Return to In-Person Relationships. Gen Z's Great Return to in-person relationships. We're going to be talking about something I read recently, a new survey that was done, and the implications for us as next-gen leaders. So with that in mind, let's get into the podcast today. Barna Institute is a research institute that does a whole bunch of surveys and research on generations. And they did a generational report on Gen Z. And when I read this recently, it blew my mind. It said that 57% of Gen Z strongly agree that in-person relationships are more valuable than digital ones. 57% said they strongly agree that in-person relationships are more valuable than digital ones. Another 30% just said that they agree with that statement, which is crazy. That's crazy, meaning that over 80% agree with the statement that in-person relationships are more valuable than digital ones. Now, let's clarify who Gen Z are as of today. These guys, Gen Z, in 2024 and in 2025 and all of the years to come. But Gen Z are people who were born in 1997 to 2012. So they're in 2024, they're 12 years old to 27 years old right now. So what we're saying is that 87% of Gen Z, the people who are in our youth and young adults ministries right now, believe that in-person relationships are more valuable than digital ones. Now, a few years ago, we thought our thought process was with the increasing use of social media and ways to digitally connect, we genuinely thought that the reality was that our in-person relationships were less and less valuable to Gen Z, and that these online platforms were more and more important. And then you include streaming of church services and all of the other online connection points. Ultimately, what we believed was that these digital platforms would surpass the need for in-person connection, or at the very least, would be the primary connection point for people. The value was put on digital connection, but now it's really clear to see that Gen Z are saying, guys, the value has been placed back onto personal relationships. Now, the key word of this study is value. That's the key word. It's not a rejection of all the digital platforms or even digital relationships. Rather, it's a recognition that what adds more value to their life is the in-person relationships over the digital. You know, I was talking about just before our general approach, I guess, worldwide to Gen Z and their relationship with digital technology. And I don't think that we were wrong to think that way. I actually think if you go back to 2019, the digital landscape was really strong, which really served as a good thing heading into the pandemic. We often slam COVID for a bunch of bad side effects, which there are. The list goes on and on and on. But what if one of the positive side effects of the whole lockdowns and digital world was the recognition or the realization of the value of in-person connect? What if that was a really great byproduct of the COVID lockdown? The reality is that it's not just the COVID lockdown that has made the reality that in-person relationships add more value than digital ones. There are other reasons why, and I want to have a look at that in this podcast today, but also in the team training. I want to look at 4 things in total. Today, we're going to talk about 2 of the 4, but 4 things in total that has contributed to the shift away from the value being placed on digital relationships to in-person relationships, and then how we should approach that as next-gen pastors and leaders. So there are 4 things. Number 1, digital overload. Number 2, the cultural shift to authenticity. Number 3, the transactional digital reality. And number 4, generational rebellion. We're going to talk about the first 2 in today's podcast, and then like I said earlier, you will have to book in a team training if you want to hear the other 2. So let's start with the first one, digital overload. If you think about it, Gen Z have grown up with smartphones, social media, digital tools like Google, Microsoft products, laptops in class, YouTube tutorials instead of Google searching, and compared to the generations before them, they've experienced the effects of the constant engagement online from a very early age. And that's just Gen Z. Think about Gen Alpha. I mean, this podcast is about Gen Z, but consider what that's going to be like and the reality of what that is for Gen Alpha. It's going to be even more true for them. For all the kids, pastors, and leaders, we must realize that the greater reality is that Gen Alpha is going to desperately need in-person relationships far more than Gen Z will, because Gen Alpha are so much more digitally immersed. Now, that's a topic for another podcast, so let's leave that there. Coming back to Gen Z, though, because of this overload, like when you overload anything, the increase goes up hugely on fatigue, drain, and resistance. And that's exactly how Gen Z have reacted to online digital relationships. There's an increase of fatigue, drain, and resistance. At the start, it was novel. It was like, whoa, this is new, this is exciting, this is crazy, this is cool. But what seemed novel once now seems quite shallow. As you spend more time being fed by the algorithm, you come into the reality that this whole thing is fake, and then you actually reject it because the reality is that actually this thing is not legit. The result is a looking for and a longing for the opposite of that digital connect, which is in-person connection. So what's our response to this digital fatigue? What are we going to do as a response as next-gen leaders? Now, I know this is going to sound cliche, but small groups and in-person connection points have never been more important if we're going to reach Gen Z. You can have the digital elements. I'm not saying delete digital connection. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying, though, is that the backbone needs to be in person. Gen Z are clearly saying that they value in-person relationships far more than they do digital relationships. If we're going to do this, we're actually going to have to unsubscribe from a lie. And this is going to be like touchy for some people, but go with me on the journey. I'm getting stressed, that's why I hit the microphone. Okay. One of the lies we're going to have to unsubscribe from is our young people don't like gathering or meeting together. I hear that all the time post-COVID from leaders and pastors of the next generation. Now, here's why I believe this is a lie. Because if you got an ask from Taylor Swift to come to your church this weekend and play praise and worship for you this weekend, Gen Z would definitely gather at your church. There is no doubt in my mind that if Taylor Swift turned up, Gen Z would be there too. Here's a fun fact. Over the last calendar year, Taylor Swift has done 149 shows in 5 different continents. Over 10 million fans, 10 million Gen Z millennials, all of them together, but 10 million people gathered to watch these shows. It's not true that they don't want to gather. That's not the truth. It is true, though, that you might not be creating a valuable experience for when they do gather. So have a think about your small groups. Are they age specific? Like, what's your age range for your groups? Make sure they target the right groups of people. Are they fun and relaxed? As in, what's the pressure like to not just lead one of these groups, but be in one? Are they consistent? Like in terms of time and location, what's the regularity of them like? And I also want to put this out there for you as well. Having lots of options is better than having 2 big ones. For example, you might have a life group or a small group that meets just to eat burgers, and it's a group of boys and they play video games, and that's their way of connecting together. Love that. Have it. You might also have a group of Bible nerds who want to study the book of Leviticus. Love it. Having more options means that people can gather around interests that they're interested in, and we can put Jesus at the center of their interests. So that's the first one. The first one, which was digital overload. Our response has to be in-person connection. The second thing we're going to talk about on today's podcast, the second thing we're going to talk about today is the cultural shift to authenticity. Now, this is another response to the overload of digital. This is what happens is because this world has been fake and it's been digitally projected, this idea of a false reality has been projected on them. And because of that, what they want now is real and authentic. Here's the problem with the word authenticity for me. The irony is that often when people are looking for authentic presentation, they copy what someone else has done that looks or feels authentic to them. I think this is what we do in our generation and in the generations. We confuse aesthetic with authentic. We confuse aesthetic with authentic. We look at the aesthetics of something and we say that's more authentic than the aesthetics of that thing. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the desire for Persian rugs, worshipping in a circle off of the stage instead of on stage, anti-technology. Like we just want everything stripped back. We're looking for more authenticity. We want smaller over the bigger. Now, I don't believe that these things that I've just articulated are the definition of what authenticity is. I believe authenticity is actually achieved when we actively live out what God has asked of us and our lives. Pursuing something that looks and feels authentic is simply pursuing aesthetics. When you actively live out what God has said in His Word and apply His character in you, that's authenticity. Sure. Now, again, you might genuinely be someone who loves those things and is all about those things. That's great. I'm not knocking those things. If that's what God has said for your church to be, for your ministry to be, for your life group to be, sure, do that. Do your thing, man. What I'm saying is I just don't want us to be people who think that that's the definition of authenticity. That somehow bigger, louder, more fun, more messy, more crazy, like LED screens, haze machines, that for some reason is now no longer what's authentic. That's silliness. Aesthetically, something might look or feel more authentic based on what they were doing in the first place. It might be more authentic to them because that's what God has called them to be. But for what God has called you to be and your church and your ministry to be, maybe that's not quite what's authentic. And that's when it becomes pursuing the aesthetic. The reality is that if we pursue the aesthetic things as authentic things, it's actually just another fake presentation. It's not any more real or any more organic or any more anything like that, any more authentic. What it is just it's just copying an aesthetic, and people will see that and be turned away from that as well. What Gen Z is looking for is not aesthetically copycat. What they're looking for is authenticity. They're looking for what's real, what's transparent, and what's genuine. And there's no better way to be authentic than to be authentic to who God has made you to be as a leader and to be what God has asked or given vision for your senior pastor to as well. So that's what I'm trying to say. What our response will be to this is important. What's our response? As a leader, this is where I want to camp for this podcast today. What's the most authentic version of you, and are you being that right now? Now, the reality is I'm not saying anything other than what is Christ's character in you and what does it look like for you to live to that fullness. For me, it looks like actually being joyous, not being limited by my circumstances. When things are going wrong or when things are being good, like for me, I have this tendency to be like really, really positive if things are going well and then really negative if things are going poorly. But the authentic version of me is just joyous, somewhere in between, somewhere that's not extreme of those things. I naturally am more of a cynic. I naturally look at things and I have a first cynical response to those things first. But an authentic version of me is looking at what Christ's character is in me and being that version of me. It's going, oh, okay, cool. I'm going to be as innocent like a dove, but I'm also going to be shrewd like a viper. I'm going to look at things that could be dangerous, and then I'm also going to apply grace and mercy and view those things through the lens of grace and mercy. Those are a couple examples for me personally, but what does that look like for you? What does it look like to be an authentic version of yourself? If people hang out with you, here's a good barometer to know if you are or are not being the most authentic version of you. If people hang out with you, are they getting a church version of you or a you version of you? Now, it's not about being more emotional, more gushy, more like crying more in meetings. That's not what being authentic is. It's actually about applying empathy to who you're connecting with. I find that as a leader, when I sit down and when I put my empathy hat on, I've had to learn empathy, surprise, surprise. But when I put my empathetic approach on and when I put my empathy hat on, I can actually view people and be a more authentic version of me far better than what I could if I didn't do that. So for you, I want to encourage you. Here's some tips on how you can be authentically you. Genuinely care for other people. Genuinely care about you. Genuinely care about Jesus. If you can genuinely care, it's actually going to bring out of you something that's more authentic and more genuine to who you are. The second thing I want to encourage you to do is focus on what they're saying. That's authentic. It's not authentic to sit there and be thinking about the 1,000 other things that you need to do, all of which are probably valid, and ignore the person who's in front of you. If you're going to be authentic, focus on what they're saying. The third thing is to be generous in your time and your words. Don't just give people your words and not your time, and don't just give people time and not your words. Be generous. Be generous in your encouragement. Be generous in your compassion. Be generous in your empathy. Be generous in your prayer. That's what it looks like to be an authentic leader. And the last thing here that I want to talk about is to actually be the most encouraging person that people know. Authentic Christianity is about encouragement. Encouragement is spiritual warfare. And I'm not saying, if they sin, just encourage them in their sin. No, encourage them to be more like Jesus. Encourage them to find more of themselves in the scriptures, to use the scriptures as a mirror. That's what the Bible talks to us about. I'm talking about being authentic in terms of our approach to other people, being authentic in our love and our grace and our mercy for others. So those are the first two things that cause this rejection of the digital narrative and the digital relationships, and a swing towards the in-person. The first one, let me scroll to the end of the notes here. The first one here is digital overload. What's our response to digital overload going to be? We have to value the gathering. Then the second thing we talked about today was the cultural shift to authenticity. We have to be a leader who is real and not fake, and encourage our Gen Z young people, and to be honest, every single person, that we shouldn't be pursuing aesthetics, but we should be pursuing authenticity. The other two, a reminder, transactional digital reality and generational rebellion. I wish I could talk about those with you today, but I can't, simply because that is available when you book in a team training with either Annaliese or I through Here and Now Ministries. You can do that. As I bring this to a close, just a reminder, over 80% of Gen Z are saying they find more value in personal relationships than digital ones. Jeez, that's a crazy stat. So I want to encourage you, have a look at that, figure out what that means for you. 57% strongly agree. Those two things again, digital overload, our response has to be a value to the gathering of people, and then also the cultural shift to authenticity, be a leader who is real and not fake. That is it for today's podcast. Let me know what you think, though. I'd love to hear about you, and if you'd like to book in team training for you and your generations teams, whether it's on Zoom or in person, you can book in Annaliese or myself. Annaliese, just a reminder, is now part of our Here and Now presenting team. We're working on her title, but I actually haven't talked to her about this. I was thinking about this today. Maybe she should be called our content creator and general management support. I bottled that. That's not very good. But let me know what you think. Email hello@harrysladennz.com, or you can hit us up on Instagram. By the way, we're announcing this today on the podcast. It's a soft launch, but we're announcing it. We have a new Instagram page for Here and Now Ministries. We're going to be putting up more content on there. If you want to engage with us there, check it out. It's up on the screen right now. Also in the bio or the description of everything we've posted today. So give it a follow, have a look there. We'll also be on Instagram @HarrySladeNZ, and you can check it out there. That is it for this episode of the Next Gen Podcast, though. Thank you for joining me on every platform. It's been so good to have you here today. Make sure you like, rate, and share this with all of your teams if you think it's going to benefit them. And if you do, make sure you tag me in it. Tag Here and Now Ministry, and also @HarrySlade on @HarrySladeNZ on social media, and I will repost it as well. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube platform. If you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, rate and follow. Hey, Next Gen Nation, if you haven't joined the Next Gen Nation, you need to. You need to make sure you do that. The Next Gen Nation is our exclusive community of Next Gen Nation members, team leaders, pastors, from all around the world, spanning many different nations. Make sure that you do that if you haven't done so. You'll also get show notes for these podcasts and extra content that comes out before everybody else gets to see it. Also, you'll get special information as well. It's a whole bunch of fun and a whole bunch of goodness, so make sure you jump on that. You can register for free. That's the other bonus, is it's absolutely free. So make sure you register, head to the website, and do that today. Also, this is the last episode of 2024, so thank you so much for joining us. Listen, it's been a huge year. We've moved countries, we've done so many amazing things, we've launched a book. It's been incredible. Thank you for your support and your encouragement. 2025 is going to be even better. Make sure you keep your eyes peeled for the social media. We're going to be doing a year recap. So check it out on social media. You don't want to miss it. But a massive thank you. Our first episode is going to be late in January. We're taking a few weeks off. So make sure you don't miss that episode. I'm really looking forward to that, actually. It's all about how to set goals and vision for the year ahead. So you don't want to miss that. It's going to be a great episode. But thank you so much for your love and your support in 2024. We love you so very much. That's it for now, though. Listen, every Next Gen leader, be encouraged. Your story is changing history, leading the legacy, and changing the tide. So don't quit. Keep the grip. And I'll see you very soon in the new year. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. And we'll see you very soon on the Next Gen podcast.